Hello and welcome to this round 12 here at Grand Prix Madrid. I'm Tim Willoughby, joined by Moraine Leibert, and we have Adriano Moscato, Carmen Daniello and Alessandro Lippi up against Christopher Green, Ben Jones and Charles Eliatambi. And we were talking before we even started about lands that tap for multiple mana on the very first turn. Eldrazi Temple into an endless one on turn one from Charles Eliatambi. He's on Eldrazi, and this another deck that really gets to make the most of lands that produce additional mana.
The good old Savannah Lions. Actually, no. 2-2.
2-2 for one. Isamaru.
Yeah, good old Isamaru. Non-legendary. He did mulligan to 6, Charles. And unfortunately, not a Eye of Ugin. This deck, it basically plays 4, 6, 10, 13 lands that produce 2 mana on turn 2. It's got 4 Eldrazi Temple, 2 City of Traders, 4 Ancient Tomb, and 3 Eye of Ugin. So, quite a lot of lands that produce 2 mana on turn 1.
And Alessandro Lippi, he's having a very careful think about what he wants to do on the first turn, because his is quite an explosive hand here. He's playing a turn 1 City of Traitors, and that's a land that taps for 2 mana, but as soon as you play another land, you do have to sacrifice that city, so it's not without a cost. And he's cast a turn 1 Ensnaring Bridge, having exiled a Simian Spirit Guide to Chrome Mox. So,
and this is bad news for the Eldrazi deck. Basically, main deck, he's got no outs. Usually, most decks at least don't have outs. Well, actually, there is one out. There's Thought-Knot Seer and bounce it. No, it's not even a legendary. You cannot bounce it with Garaka. So it's like Thought-Knot Seer and kill your own Thought-Knot Seer to let your opponent draw cards is the only way out, I think, out of Ensnaring Bridge.
And we see there City of Traitors getting replaced by a mountain. And here is a Chalice of the Void on 2. Both of these decks potentially can do cool things with Chalice of the Void. Looks like Charles Eliatambi has a response there in Warping Whale. He's going to be making an Eldrazi Scion token. He's not going to be able to cast it and resolve it once that Chalice of the Void's in play. So get the value where you can. The extra mana may prove helpful as well if it works out that some other lock pieces come from Alessandro Lippi here. For those of you wondering, Andrea Mengucci, Javier Dominguez and Christian Calcano are still somehow X2, having started their weekend at 1 and 2. Thought-Knot Seer coming along here from Charles Eliatambi, and he sees Goblin Rabblemaster, Ensnaring Bridge number 2 and another mountain. It's kind of a mixed blessing here when you're removing cards with Thought-Knot Seer against an Ensnaring Bridge already in play, as the amount of cards in hand lowers for Alessandro Lippi, so do the prospects of attacking for Charles Eliatambi.
Usually these Eldrazi decks, they run Eldrazi, All is Dust. Of course, that not an answer either to Ensnaring Bridge, as it is an artifact. This is the second time today we see an artifact deck. Well, you could consider this mono red deck basically as an artifact deck. Artifact control being good, just because in Legacy people don't play that much artifact removal. If you look at the usual Eldrazi list, Eldrazi aggro list, there's 2 Wretched Bomb which can come in and get rid of Ensnaring Bridge, but that's about it. There's not much more.
Well, in the face of Ensnaring Bridge, one source of damage that will still keep things going is Endbringer. It's just come into play for Charles Eliatambi, and in addition to being able to tap to make it so that creatures can't attack or block, in addition to untapping during each other player's untap step, it does tap to deal 1 damage to target creature or player. He can, of course, also use it to draw cards if he wishes, but right now it's his best way of getting damage through and actually winning this game.
Yeah, 7 turns. It pings for 2 a turn. He actually found one of his very few answers. Of course, if you play so many 2-mana lands, you can afford to play a couple of Endbringers. Usually they run 2 copies of Endbringer. Very powerful Eldrazi if you can play it off of 3 lands.
And here comes a Blood Moon. So that does mean that all of those lands that Charles Eliatambi has, firstly, they're not going to be tapping for multiple mana, but also, slightly concerningly for him, he doesn't have a way of producing colorless mana, so literally the only ability that Endbringer that he can use is the dealing damage to Alessandro Lippi. Now, given that that was the thing that was actually closing out games, definitely where he wanted to be anyway, but Blood Moon on other games in this series, it will be best of 3 between these 2 players, it's actually really quite good against a lot of what the Eldrazi deck's got going on, because if you catch it with the sorts of lands it has in play right now, none of them are tapping for colorless mana. That means you can't cast Thought-Knot Seer, you can't cast Endbringer. You can't cast a whole variety of the key cards in the Eldrazi deck.
Fury Confluence. Is it actually... Why are we playing the Fury Confluence? I think the Fury Confluence is the only way out, no? I think he should have kept that in hand. Oh, of course, Caracas, a second copy. Because of Blood Moon, you can now play it. A 1/1 endless one. Interestingly, he plays it as a 1/1 because that gives him the highest chance of being able to attack with the endless one. Of course, no use in making a very big one.
So somehow or other there, Alessandro Lippi, I think that if you'd asked him what he was hoping to achieve in Game 1, he probably would have told you more or less the things that he did in terms of game actions. The one game action that he did not get to complete was winning the game, because that Endbringer, accurately named as it turns out.
Yep, ends the game even with a Ensnaring Bridge in play.
Yeah, a very, very interesting bit of tech there. Not something that you would necessarily plan around if your opponent, you knew that they were playing Eldrazi. Would it even be in the top 5 and the top 10 of the Eldrazi that you would be thinking about going into that game?
Nah, probably. Well, I guess if you know all of the decklists, I think most of the Eldrazi decklists do run 2 copies of Endbringer. So I guess if you're very familiar with the format, you should have known about the Endbringer. Personally, I didn't remember it, but once he played it, I said, yeah, of course, they do run 2 copies. I mean, if you run so many lands that produce 2 mana, there's Eye of Ugin, there's the Temple, there's City of Traders, there's Ancient Tomb. You usually get to play the Endbringer on turn 3 or 4, and then it's a very powerful creature. It's a 5/5 on turn 3 or 4 that draws you extra cards in the control matchup, pings you when you're locked underneath Ensnaring Bridge, or make sure creatures can block. So a great creature to have.
So that the very first win in this series. Ben Jones, Christoph Green, and Charles Alatambi up against Adriano Moscato. Come on, Daniello and Alessandro Lippi here. Lippi, a very familiar face on the European GP circuit, tried to make it out to just about as many as he can, and this instance gets to play with a couple of friends at the same time. One of the nice features of Team Magic. So just to give you an idea of what the matchups that we've got going on here, we have a variety of different red decks on the Italian side of the table. Adriano Moscato is on mono red in addition to Lippi on red prison. In between them, Carmen Daniello, he's got a few extra colours to work with Jund, so red and green and black in total going on there. On the other side of things, Christoph Green, he's on Grixis Energy, Ben Jones on Grixis Shadow, and then Charles Alatambi, he does not want to be Grixis, he wants to be all about the Eldrazi, as we have seen thus far. So a few interesting matchups going on here.
Excuse me.
Some of the decks that we see going on here are not necessarily the ones that we've seen in the hands of so many players in the room. I think that mono red and blue black seem to be the consensus choices for standard, with blue black probably leading the day there. Jund, a popular choice, but while some people love their Bloodbraid Elves, others are all about Jace the Mind Sculptor, or indeed the various other options available in Modern. And then we have, well, in Legacy, the amount of lock pieces in our Legacy matchup definitely a little bit unusual. Now let's have a quick look at the top 10 standings right now. Bonda, Peterson and Nevelson, they have stretched their lead to now a full match win against the field. Elias Watsfeld, Larsen and Nystrom right behind them on 28 points there. We're seeing a lot more draws in this field than we might do in others, and we can, as we go down, we see that on the 9 wins, the 27 points, we have places 3 through 8, and then after that we start to get into the 26s and so on. But the fact that Mengucci, Calcano and Dominguez on 27 points, having started at 1 and 2, is just incredible. 8 wins on the bounce for that team. It doesn't matter too much for them in this exact field whether or not they pick up their losses early or late, because those losses later on just we reckon it's going to be a relatively clean cut. I don't think it's going to come down too much to tiebreakers whether or not they're able to make the cut to, sorry, not to make the top 4.
It seems like both players are mulliganing, or is it just Lippi?
We've had a mulligan from Lippi. I think that Charles might be on a full grip of 7 here. And Lippi carefully considering what he wants to do once more. It seemed like he had a pretty good solid start on game 1, but it didn't quite pan out for him. He's obviously made a couple of adjustments here. Decides to keep, sees a mountain on top, and I think that one might be going to the bottom here. He's already got a couple of mountains in hand. It's a question of what other accelerants he has going on there, really.
I think his hand is mountain, Chromox, ensnaring bridge, double Chandra. So I actually like keeping the mountain just to make sure you can play a turn 3 Chandra. He plays this one correctly, playing around the Chalice of the Void on 0 on turn 1. Knows that there's no need to protect the Chromox from, for example, Totnuts here. That one won't come out on turn 0. Oh, look at that. He might actually get punished. Oh no, Charles doesn't choose to play it. But that does mean that Alessandro Lippi gets to play his ensnaring bridge on turn 2.
Yeah, Ratchet Bomb, at any point it can tap and sacrifice to destroy all permanents that have converted, all non-land permanents, should I say, that have converted mana cost equal to the number of counters on it. He's ticked it up to 1, so it will not be destroying Chrome Mox anytime soon, and then cast a big 3/3 Endless one.
Yeah, this game's kind of problematic. Chandra not even that good. I mean, it could kill off Endless one, but there's a Mishra's Factory. So if Charles wants to, he can just attack the Chandra and kill it. Or he might even just play a Reality Smasher and get in there. This is a very problematic game for Alessandro, who was on the draw, and I don't think it's a very good matchup, especially if Ratchet Bomb comes in. That is just the perfect answer to Ensnaring Bridge.
Yeah, ticks it up to 3. So even though Alessandro Lippi right now does not have very many cards in hand, if Charles Elatambi wants to be attacking this turn, he can do so relatively easily. He's taken a fair amount of damage from these Ancient Tombs.
Oh, this is so unfortunate. He was actually hoping for Charles to use the Wretched Bomb to get rid of the Ensnaring Bridge, and then have a second copy, but he lost the second copy to Ensnaring Bridge. I'm guessing we're going to see a very quick game here with Alessandro already down to 13. Take 13,
Crikey.
game.
So even though there was a lot of Ancient Tomb damage, Reality Smasher just getting in for so much that it means that Charles Elatambi, he's already a match up for this team. Ben Jones a game up against Carmine Dinello. Adriano Moscato a game up against Christoph Green. But these games falling thick and fast. 37 minutes left on the clock. 37 and change there. And already the first match down. Legacy, when it's quick, it's very quick.
You're not surprised to see that all is dust there from the Eldrazi deck.
So Carmine Dinello here, he's a game down against Ben Jones, looking to square things up here. Carmine on Jund, and up against Grixis on the other side of things here. Kitchen Finks, not necessarily a card that you would expect to see in the main deck, but it's definitely had its time in Jund at various points.
Usually a cyber card these days. Main deck, the Scavenging Ooze gets the edge. 3 copies of Scavenging Ooze in most Jund lists these days, together with 4 Tarmogoyf. Kitchen Finks often comes in from the cyber as a singleton, maybe 2 copies. In matchups like these, very good against Dead Shadow, blocks twice if needed. Also very good against Burn, of course. That doesn't need to be explained. I think in this particular matchup, Jund is a little bit favored. Cards like Abrupt Decay, Fatal Push, are all very good against the Dead Shadow deck. But as we see, Ben Jones did win game 1, so he found his way around all of these removal spells.
If Ben Jones can win just this game, he will advance his team to a 10-2 record. A fantastic place to be this late on Sunday as players start eyeing up a top 8 berth. Though, I guess with 2 losses, any of these teams, as soon as they hit that 3rd loss, they know that they're unlikely to be able to make it into the top 4 of this tournament.
By looking at the standings, I wouldn't be too surprised if one would actually make it in. I see a lot of draws. I saw in 9th and 10th place there was already teams with more than 2 losses. I think it was 2 losses and 2 draws. 1 loss and 2 draws. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see one team make it in with 3 losses.
As things stand, a couple of copies of Obstinate Baloth left over after an Inquisition of Kozilek. So a huge amount of different ways of gaining life for Carmine Dinello here. If Ben Jones is looking to close this game out fast, he might have to think again. Knowing, of course, that Obstinate Baloth there will mean that Ben Jones has a bit of pause if he starts thinking about the likes of Liliana of the Veil. Austin Baloth does have a little bit of extra text there that can be problematic with discard in the mix.
Yeah, the worst play I've definitely ever made was turn 1 Thoughtseize, take your Obstinate Ballot. That was not very smart.
I've had my opponent turn 1 Thoughtseize, take your Wiltleaf Liege, a similar sort of situation.
Yeah.
And Ben Jones here gradually improving his mana base. He's got access to plenty of colours here relatively straightforwardly. And once you hit 4 mana, of course, there is the potential for the likes of Cryptic Command in the mix.
Yeah, Cryptic Command, not a card we see all that often in Grixis Death Shadow. Actually, Grixis Death Shadow, a deck that operates the best at 2 or 3 lands, doesn't really want to play more than 3 lands because these are very unlikely to be used. Although with Snapcaster Mage and Kolaghan's Command, you sometimes do get to use 5 mana in 1 turn.
So Carmine Dianello here, he's got a relatively straightforward path. He's going to keep sending his creatures in and hoping that that's good enough. Ben Jones at 14 life for now, but being threatened with attacks for 6 here. 3 untapped mana, but ultimately, I guess the one consideration, if we are talking about Death Shadow, is do you want to do big, non-decisive attacks, i.e. ones that don't close the game out? If there are, then just going to be Death Shadows coming down.
Given that Ben Jones still has 5 cards in hand, yeah, you might actually consider not attacking and first deploying lethal damage. I mean, he also has the Raging Ravine. If he doesn't attack next turn, he can attack for 14. That's lethal. By attacking now, he will put Ben Jones low enough, and there's likely to be a removal on one of the 2 creatures. Actually, it is going to be a Snapcaster Mage on Fatal Push. Yeah, this is actually very, very bad news for Carmine Daniello. Ben is probably going to block the Kitchen Finks, kill it in the process, and then Fatal Push after damage on the Obstinate Ballot. Go down to 10, which makes sure that his Death Shadow are live, and he gets rid of both creatures. Carmine on the other side, how do you say it?
Carmine Dianiello.
Carmine. Let's call him Carmine. Kolaghan's Command, he could kill the Snapcaster Mage and save his Kitchen Finks, but that would mean Ben could even play the Fatal Push before damage, take only 2 damage, go down to 12. I don't think that's a good use also, because there's this... Well, he could get back the Scavenging Ooze, so that's actually one of the better targets to get back. Yeah.
So does kill Snapcaster Mage, gets back Scavenging Ooze.
He does have another forest, so he will be able to play that Scavenging Ooze this turn. But now I'm guessing Ben Jones will just play the Fatal Push before damage. Or maybe he just wants his Death Shadow to be bigger. Actually, this is an interesting question. If you're holding, for example, 2 Death Shadow, do you take the 4 extra damage here? Or do you just go down to 12? I think going down to 8 is the right choice. And it gives the upside also of being able to Fatal Push the Scavenging Ooze if you want to. Yeah, good play here by Ben Jones. I'm guessing we're going to see a Fatal Push on the Scavenging Ooze, because that one could grow bigger than the Obstinate Ballot. Yep. And now he's at 8, meaning that his Death Shadow will be a 5/5, big enough to block the Raging Ravine, the Obstinate Ballot, and the Kitchen Finks.
Yeah, this was a really interesting set of decisions on both sides, whether or not to make the big attack, how exactly to play through that turn if you're Ben Jones, how to manage your life total. Not trivial, and the sort of thing that navigating this sort of a turn well is where the real differences end up lying in terms of overall record across the end of a 2-day tournament.
Yeah, imagine if Carmine didn't attack, the Snapcaster Mage wouldn't have done anything. The Fatal Push would not have been able to kill any of the creatures. He didn't have to use his Kolaghan's Command. He could have just played the second Obstinate Ballot. It would have been much better for him. Now, because he attacked, he had to kill the Snapcaster Mage, had to use his Kolaghan's Command, and this means he's down. His opponent is down to 8 life. Actually going down to 5 life, maybe even playing another creature this turn. Yep, he's gonna play a very big 8/8 Death Shadow. Carmine really needs to draw a removal spell here. Is that Trun? Yeah, it's Trun. Actually, Trun is a very good blocker against that shadow. So not that bad of a draw.
Of course, with that Liliana of the Last Hope in play, there's a little bit of a clock on Carmine just in terms of he kind of wants to be attacking Liliana. He can't really afford for that Planeswalker to get too large here.
He could animate the Ravine and then attack, but then he loses one of his creatures. His opponent would just block the Obstinate Bale, and then he's left with just 4 lands and the Raging Ravine. I don't think Ben really minds losing his Liliana at that point. But then again, if you give him Liliana, -2, get back my Snapcaster Mage is also pretty bad news.
Yeah, this is a tough set of choices here for Carmine. In spite of the fact that life totals are 25-5, that does not necessarily mean that things are quite as healthy for him as the life totals might denote.
He kind of needed a Bloodbraid Elf into Lightning Bolt here, or a Bloodbraid Elf into Removal Spell. That would have sealed the deal, made sure they go into game 3, but it seems like Ben Jones is pulling ahead here.
Charles Alatembi has already picked up the first win for this team on the right of our screen. Adriano Moscato, a game up for the standard match against Christoph Green, but that's all going to be for naught if Ben Jones is able to put away this exact game that we're watching here. Carmine very carefully considering what he's doing here.
Yeah, both options are pretty bad. Yeah, it seems like he is going for the Raging Ravine attack on Ben Jones. Oh, he's actually... I like this. He recognizes there's a very small chance of him winning the game if it goes much longer. So he knows he needs to top deck something like Lightning Bolt. Puts Ben Jones at 1, and now is just hoping to draw one of his burn spells in the form of Lightning Bolt, or maybe even Bloodbraid Elf into Lightning Bolt. Although this is, if his opponent has something like Stubborn Denial, might actually be problematic. Even that plan gets countered by that play.
So Liliana gets back a Snapcaster Mage. Gigantic Death Shadow in play.
12/12. So
Even a Teemo
luckily
Battle Rage does not mean that this Death Shadow is lethal.
20. He's at 25.
Well, a little bit of a reprieve for Team Moscato, Danilo and Lippi. Adriano Moscato has won his match against Christoph Green. That means that this is our final match going in this matchup. 27 minutes left on the clock. Ben Jones currently up a game, but whoever wins this match, whoever wins the modern match in our team matchup, will ultimately advance to 10-2. 9-3, definitely risky business for trying to make the final 4 at this event. Thought Scour on Alessandro Lippi. Maelstrom Pulse and a Scavenging Ooze going to the bin.
Probably happy about that.
Inquisition of Kozilek sees a swing and a miss ×2. Obstinate Baloth and Throne the Last Troll.
Bolt, bolt, bolt. We all want to see game 3, right? Ooh, this is... Now Bloodbraid Elf into removal is also an out for Carmine.
All right, so by my count, there is a happy amount of options here that can get Carmine and DNL out of this.
No trample on Raging Ravine.
It's angry, but it's not trampling, and he very slowly peeks at that last card.
The whammy.
It actually is Liliana of the Veil. Not quite enough mana to play Liliana and activate that Raging Ravine.
Yeah, and if he plays it, Ben is just going to sacrifice the Snapcaster Mage. So I think the best play he can do there is play either the Obstinate Bala or the Trun. Going for the Obstinate Bala back up to 17. Make sure that he's not dead to 1 removal spell.
Ben Jones, a 12/12 Death Shadow, a 2/1 Snapcaster Mage, and that Liliana of the Last Hope. Teemo Battle Rage now would be kind of interesting. the chat calling for a gut shot from Carmine Daniello. That would definitely get some style points. I think that my favourite in that regard would be a sudden shock, just the ultimate slow roll card.
Damage? He cannot go damage on his tech. Sudden shock. That doesn't exist anymore. So you attack, no blocks. Sudden shock.
Yeah. Death Shadow coming on in. Ben Jones is not going to win this game without attacking, so he sends the 12-12 on its way.
Yeah, he could actually take it. Or if he blocks and he plays a Trun next turn, he actually buys himself another draw. If he doesn't block, there might be Bloodbraid Elf, which might actually be an out. But instead he is going to block, it seems. Yeah, I think I like blocking just to generate an extra draw step.
Looks like Carmine agrees. At this point, because all of the other games have finished in our feature match area for these teams, we have 3 heads on 3 trying to figure out the best line of play, and that's kind of the reason that we're seeing the pace of this game slow down a little bit. There are 23 minutes left on the clock, 23 and change, and it looks like they have now finally decided, yeah, you know what, that Obstinate Battle, it is definitely dying to this Death Shadow, and that's going to have to be good enough.
I like this because he's got the Trun, and the Trun will almost certain be able to block next turn on the Death Shadow. So this way he keeps himself high enough on 17 life so that he survives next turn, and then he might be able to draw another Lightning Bolt off the top.
I like Street Wraith in this spot. So we have a 3-4 unblockable, thanks to Swamp Walk, on the battlefield.
Surgical Extraction, not what he wanted there. Means he's down to playing the Trun, jumping. Even a land would have been so much better, because that would have been made sure he could regenerate the Trun. Now he just has to play it and jump with it. Yeah, this was one of the worst draw he could get, Surgical Extraction. At least it does something against the Snapcaster Mage, which Ben Jones could still return with Liliana. But that's
yeah, things looking comparatively good here for Ben Jones. Ben Jones on 1 life, of course, he'll have done all this work potentially for nothing if a lightning bolt comes off the top from Carmine Daniello. We don't know just yet whether or not there's any kind of stubborn denial or similar in hand for Ben Jones. He's been keeping his cards relatively close to his chest.
And it just shows how difficult a deck like Death Shadow is to pilot. I mean, there's a lot of games where you have to go down very low and where your opponent can just top deck a lightning bolt or something, and you got to make sure that you navigate these games in order to maximize your winning chances. You have to go down low enough so your Death Shadows are big, but you can't go too low so that you lose to a top deck. And there will be a lot of games where you lose to a top deck, to be fair. It's just nothing that can stop it. I mean, if Carmine would have drawn a lightning bolt here, this game would have been over, and we would have gone to game 3.
So a surgical extraction coming from Carmine Daniello here. He is paying mana for it rather than Phyrexian mana, and this does a few things. So it forces the question on if there's a Snapcaster Mage coming from Ben Jones. It also potentially means that Carmine is going to get the information of exactly what Ben Jones is holding. He'll know whether or not he needs to think about playing around the likes of any kind of counter magic. What it also does, though, is it means there's only 1 card left in hand, making Kolaghan's Command, returning Snapcaster Mage, a viable option for him. Looks like the Surgical Extraction was on Snapcaster Mage, so effectively that Kolaghan's Command countered the Surgical Extraction while also clearing out Carmine's hand. Desperate times for Carmine Daniello here.
I'm unsure how much that actually does. I don't know if it wasn't just better to... Oh, there were two Snapcaster Mages. Might have been just better to let that Snapcaster Mage go and start playing some cantrips in order to draw a Stubborn Denial. That doesn't seem like a man who drew Lightning Bolt. And he's at 5, right? Yeah, I think he's dead now. even with a Raging Ravine blocking one of the Snapcaster mages.
Let me count the ways, says Charles Alatambi as he sends in. That Street Wraith cannot be blocked thanks to the Swamp in play for Carmine Daniello, and with a fatal push on Raging Ravine, that's enough for Ben Jones to win his match against Carmine Daniello. You can see lots of handshakes. Charles Alatambi was able to win his relatively decisively against Alessandro Lippi, and that means that Alatambi and co do advance to 10-2. They're 10-2. They're in double digits on their wins, and that means that they still very much in the thick of things, playing for top 4 here at this Grand Prix.
I think if they win the next one, they can draw in to top 4.
Quite possibly. We will have more magic for you very soon indeed. Do not go anywhere. We'll be back right after these messages.
Welcome to our city guide for the first double event of the year, Grand Prix Seattle, Standard and Legacy. For this one, we got some sweet shots of things that you get to do around the city while you're there. Let's check them out. Welcome to Seattle, the home of Magic the Gathering and the home of our first double GP this year in April. We're here to give you a look at some of the cool things you can do in town, starting with the Space Needle. Built in 1962 for the World's Fair, it is 600 feet tall and is built to withstand earthquakes, massive winds, and has 25 lightning rods. Because with a building this big, you really want to be sure. Before the elevators were installed, workers commuted to work in a metal bucket. That's absolutely ridiculous. The views are amazing. You can see all of downtown, you can see Mount Rainier and like Elliott Bay and everything, and it actually is, even on what's like kind of a little bit of a foggy day, you can still see everything. It's actually awesome. Major part of the Space Needle is that the entire thing is filled with the intoxicating smell of caramel popcorn, which like, I had to get a bag. I didn't remember doing it. I was just drawn in by it and I had to get it. Oh, it's so good. It's actually really good. Yeah. Come to the world's first ever Starbucks and try their special Pike Place roast. This is Pike Place Market, the #1 tourist attraction in Seattle. It's over 100 years old and is easily the best place in the state to see a fish get hurled 3 feet in the air. This is just a stone's throw from the Space Needle and is the Globe Fountain. It's this awesome water show fountain that plays music 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's really cool because it's all lit up at night. This is the Artist Playground at the Seattle Center, which is kind of just a playground by day, but it's also a bunch of musical instruments. The swings have wind chimes attached to them. There's an entire pipe piano kind of thing you can play over there. It's actually really cool. And at night, the whole thing's super quiet. The playground is also the only thing on our entire trip that has the coveted James seal of approval. You having a good time? And this is GameWorks, a retro-style arcade right next to the convention center where you can play a bunch of old-style arcade games and win carnival tickets. So if you're coming into town to walk away with a giant plushy snake, this is the place to do it.
When you're in Seattle, one of my favorite restaurants to go to is called Wild Ginger. It's not that far from the venue. Get the 7-flavor beef. You're welcome.
This is the Washington State Convention Center, which you'll be pleased to know is right in the middle of the city, which means there's tons of food, hotels, and things to do around here. And it's easy to find because of this giant archway. If you're flying into Seattle-Tacoma, or SeaTac as the locals call it, the best way to get to downtown Seattle is with the Light Link rail straight from the airport. Be it for Standard or for Legacy, we can't wait to see you at GP Seattle.
Hello and welcome back to the Red Zone. I'm Tim Willoughby. This is Moraine Laubert, and we have finished our regular scheduled Magic for the round, but that does not mean to say that we haven't got a little bit more that we can bring you. We have, of course, got a little bit of Time Walk Magic for you, which we're going to get a chance to show you right this moment as we head back down to our feature match area. So we have, in our standard matchup, Damien Buyot is playing Blue-Black Control against Mono-Red from Matteo More. Fabrizio Campanino is on Mono-Green Tron against Arno Jokum with Jund. And then over in Legacy, Red Prison in the hands of Tommaso Badiali against Louis Bachaude's Grixis Pyromancer. Any particular decks that you like the look of here, Moraine?
I would love if we start with Legacy, as always. Once again, the Red Prison deck. We've seen it. We've seen Badiali yesterday, right?
Well, ask and you shall receive. Badiali, he has the early Ancient Tomb. He has a Chrome Mox and an imprint on there. Looks like there may be a response. Is there going to be a Force of Will on this Chrome Mox? No, turns out not. If you're going to have a Force of Will, you might want to save it for this 4-mana spell being cast against you on turn 1. Is this going to be a Chandra on turn 1? It's exactly what we got. Chandra, Torch of Defiance, coming down before Louis Bachot has even made a single play this game.
Easy game.
Apparently. 2 points of damage going to the head there as Chandra ticks up. Gitaxian Probe. What's left? 1 Ensnaring Bridge, 1 City of Traitors.
Perfect. That's the perfect 2-card hand now. Like
yep.
Another land to play, another 2-mana land, and the Ensnaring Bridge so to protect his Chandra. So all he needs to do now is make sure his Chandra is big enough so that it survives Lightning Bolt ×2. Unless, of course, a Force of Will stop the Ensnaring Bridge, which
I think there is now
likely.
a Force of Will available to Louis Bachot, and I can't imagine that he's going to be able to let everything slide here on the other side of the table. He's already having to look on as Chandra ticks up turn after turn.
And I think it's actually double Lightning Bolt as well next turn, plus another land. So, ooh, look at that. Adding 2 mana. Force of Will. He's going to let the Ensnaring Bridge resolve this way, though. A bit surprised by the counter on the Pia, but maybe 2 Topters were too much for him. At least he gets rid of the Chandra, but now how is he going to beat the Ensnaring Bridge? Is there anything in the Delver, like a Braid maybe? Main deck?
Quite possibly. Maybe he's just hoping that it's going to work out that Tommaso Badiali is going to have to just tap that Ancient Tomb another 8 times. Seems optimistic, but you never know. Games have been won in stranger ways in Magic the Gathering.
And he also knew about the Ensnaring Bridge because he played the Gitaxian Probe, so he must have a plan against it. Maybe his plan is to destroy all the lands from Tommaso. Now another Magus of the Moon. Gotta shut down all of the blue sources. Also gonna shut down the Wasteland. Is that the Abrade? It might be as a singleton actually.
Now it's interesting because one of the potential ways that Tommaso could have got himself in trouble was drawing lots of double red spells and not being able to cast them. Now that he's got Megas of the Moon and indeed Blood Moon in play, that's not a concern anymore. Yes, he could get stuck with, I don't know, Chandra's in hand, that sort of thing, but he's not got that many 4-drops in his deck. And at the moment, it's not even as if Louis Bachot is even threatening to do any damage by attacking. So this is definitely a tough old spot for Louis to be in.
Yeah, I think this game's pretty much over. Even if he finds a Lightning Bolt for the Magus of the Moon, there's still the Blood Moon. And if he finds an answer for the Blood Moon, there's still the Ensnaring Bridge.
And then there's the Trinisphere, which means that now, if Louis Bachot is casting spells, he's having to tap all of his lands to do so. It will cost a minimum of 3. Now, Tommaso, he has now got 2 cards in hand. He's gradually building cards back up in hand here as he's not got quite enough mana to deploy them, or indeed maybe the targets that he's looking for.
So that he can attack with the Magus. That's why he's keeping these cards in hand. The 3-mana Gitaxian Probe, that's when you know you're in trouble. And 2 life.
Yeah.
2 life. 3 mana, only 2 mana. 'Cause
Yeah,
the
the
2
third
life
mana
counts.
is being paid with 2 life. So for now, Megas the Moon beat down is what it's all about.
He's at 6. Fury Confluence, 6U. No Force of Will. There is Days, but Days, no islands. Yep, game
That'll
game
do it.
1.
And the beauty of Time Walk Magic, we do get to jump across, and now we get to see Arnaud Jokum against Fabrizio Campanino. So we have Tron on the right of our screen, we have Jund on the left.
Seems like the Italians are going for the unfair decks. The decks that don't play fair Magic. I mean,
The ones with lands that tap for more than 1 mana.
yeah, something like that. Try to annoy your opponent as much as possible with either Tron or cards like Blood Moon and Ensnaring Bridge. I like that strategy. I wonder if there's a standard version of that deck. Is there a standard deck that like wants your opponent to be annoyed as much as possible?
I mean, there are standard options for lands that tap for multiple mana once you start transforming enchantments. So maybe that's the answer.
And a tough matchup for Arnaud. Jund is not really known for beating up on Tron, especially game 1 when you don't have Fulminator Mages. After Cyber, it gets a little bit better. Fulminator Mage and Bloodbraid help a lot. But before Cyber, cards like Ugin, Karn are very problematic. Yeah, there we see it, -2. Get rid of both of your 2-drops, and now a 5 loyalty Planeswalker left for Arnaud.
Yeah, throwing out Ghostfire left, right, and center. Yes, a Lightning Bolt takes Ugin down to 2 loyalty, but there's going to have to be at least a land to activate Raging Ravine to finish off the big Planeswalker, and that's before we worry about anything else that Fabrizio Campanino has going on. My apologies, actually needed 2 mana to get that, 2 more mana to get the Raging Ravine on top. So Ugin continuing to take 3-point bites out of what Arnaud Jokum has going on here, and is joined by his best buddy, the other colorless Planeswalker, Karn Liberated, who liberates a fatal push from Arnaud Jokum's hand.
I think I would have preferred destroying the Raging Ravine here to protect the Ugin.
Yeah, I can definitely see an argument for that one.
The card in hand, it was certainly not a Bloodbraid Elf, because Arnaud would have played it. It was not a Lightning Bolt, because Arnaud would have played it as well. So what other cards are you worried about? If it was a creature, it would have been played. So there were very few cards left that he could have had that were problematic.
I mean, I guess that with Ghost Quarter untapped, you're not really even that worried about the Raging Ravine, as we see happen exactly there. Ultimately,
good point.
you've got 2 Planeswalkers in play. They're both ticking up. You're probably in pretty safe spot here. Tommaso Badiali having picked up his game 1 win. Fabrizio Campanino doing his best to try and catch up with his teammate, getting the game 1 win. Does so, and we are on to our next little bit of Time Walk Magic, and we get to see a whole bunch of unstable mountains stacked up next to one another for Matteo Mori. He's on mono red. Damien Biot, he is on blue-black and has successfully managed to stay alive for now, keep the board clear, but he's on 3 life. That's not going to take too much work for this red deck to get through.
Lightning Strike range. There's not a lot of counters actually in the blue-black deck. There's Commit, which delays the Lightning Strike, but I don't think a lot of these blue-black decks, they run main deck Negate. There is a flipped Search for Ascanta, so he does have the card advantage going. He might actually be able... Oh, there's Disallow. It's actually blue-black control. Blue-black control, of course, does run a lot of counter spells in the form of Disallow main deck.
Yeah, Damien working out exactly what he wants to do here. The Scarab God kind of sat there, giving him a little wave. Put me in the game, coach.
Pick me, pick me. Nope, discard. And that's when you know the mono red deck is in trouble. When your blue-black control opponent is starting to discard Vraska's Contempt.
Yeah, Earthshaker Kenra sat at the top of Matteo Mori's graveyard here. Though, if there's a disallow, that can stop the Eternalize ability just as well as just about anything else. And as Kanta, having a little search, finds an Essence Scatter.
Damien kind of hoping to draw more lands. He's also got Moment of Craving to go up to 5 if needed. He just wants more lands so that he can actually start playing threats while still keeping up mana for Disallow. I don't think I see a Disallow, but I do see a Commit Memory. There's also a Torrential Gearhulk, but Matteo could respond to that with the Scavenger Grounds. So that Torrential Gearhulk actually not that good at this point.
Yeah, Damien Biot happy to play it slow at this point. He's on 3 lives, so he definitely needs to be careful. Matteo Mori, given that he's got 3 damage left to deal, is he better off accumulating lots of cards in hand and potentially having one big turn where he plays a flurry of spells to make counter magic a little harder?
Yeah, I think as long as Damien is not putting up any pressure, I think Matteo should just wait with his lightning. I mean, it's very likely that Damien has at least one counter at this point. Especially if he's always keeping up 3 or 4 lands, you can basically be sure that he has at least one counter. So your best hope is that Damien finally taps out 5 to play the Scarab God, only keeps up 3 or 4 mana, and then you Lightning Strike, draw another, and play the second. So actually this is the turn where Matteo wants to go for it.
So there is the Scarab God. Typically a very, very powerful magic card indeed once it hits the battlefield. In this instance, though, Damien Biot pretty much needs it to do the earth and everything on it because Matteo Mori only has 3 points of damage to deal, and I think that we're likely to see a bit of a flurry of activity from him here. So kicks things off with the Scavenger Grounds. That takes away some of the ability of the Scarab God to cause a problem, exiling the graveyards. Next up, Matteo Mori needs to see what he can do about those final 3 points of life. It would be lovely for him if he can threaten something now, force Damien Biot to tap out entirely and then untap and have another source of damage. That might be a little optimistic. We'll find out soon enough.
Unfortunately, Earthshaker Canara, it cannot make sure that the Scarab God can block. It's got only 4 power, so the triggered ability won't be enough to make sure the Scarab God can block. He could, of course, hope that Damien is scared and animates the creature himself and then Lightning Strike. Did he draw a second one? First one going to the dome. He could also Moment of Craving, -2/-2 on his own Scarab God.
That'll be a nice play. I think I kind of like that.
Or Disallow, or Commit Memory.
I mean, the issue is that his mana is a little bit curtailed here. Taps out entirely to commit that Lightning Strike. The second Lightning Strike will do it. The team of More Campanino and Tommaso Badiali picking up all of the game ones, and we get a chance to jump across and see Fabrizio Campanino in his game 2. No early Tron for him, had to play a Forest on one of those early turns, though Relic of Progenitus is kind of nice against various of the things that Jund has going on. It makes those Tarmogoyfs and such a little bit less exciting.
A good flip here for Arnaud, actually. Colligan's Command can get rid of the Oblivion Stone by destroying an artifact, and then also let Fabrizio discard another card as he's only holding 3 more cards. He does have the Tower, it seems. Might actually have the Tron, but nothing big to play. Does still have 2 Relic of Progenitus to sacrifice, though.
Bob getting stuck in. I like that. Attacks for 2 with Dark Confidant, having already drawn a card with it for the turn. Plays that Colligan's Command that you mentioned there, Moraine. Forces a discard from Campanino. Given that he already has 1 Relic of Progenitus, I can definitely see the appeal of discarding the second. Instead, goes for Urza's Mine. Already 1 Urza's Mine in play. And the target for the Relic of Progenitus, very much Arnaud Jokum right now, trying to just limit that graveyard a little bit. Kicking things off with an Ancient Stirrings. Could really do with finding one of those big payoff cards for having the full Urzatron. Sees a couple of copies of Thragtusk, can't fetch them. Instead has to just take a Chromatic Star here. The star will, of course, allow him to dig a little deeper. As Tron decks do, they magically find ways of generating quite a lot of additional card drawing with their various trinkets.
Yeah, it's crazy how consistent the deck actually draws one of his big threats. It doesn't have that many, but there's the likes of Ancient Stirrings. There's so many spheres and stars and Relic of Progenitus that you always get to sacrifice basically for free because you get 7 mana once you hit the Tron. So the biggest issue of the deck is finding the Tron. Once it has the Tron, you usually draw one of the big cards naturally.
And here is Thragtusk. Not the biggest of threats on the deck, but you know what? The extra life, very welcome. And if Thragtusk does get killed off, that's a beast token. So 2 cards in 1 in a way. And the 5/3 will be able to pressure Arno Jochum's life total relatively well. Arno Jochum here needs to try and get something going.
Yeah, this is tough. He needs to pressure Fabrizio because he cannot let him just draw more cards. He know one way or another his opponent will find a big Ulamog or Karn or something. This is actually a good start. He could hold his opponent from the complete Tron, destroying the tower or whatever he likes
I think I would
to.
destroy the mine here because there's already been 1 mine discarded and indeed exiled, and he does go with that one, essentially saying, I'm going to play the odds here. I think that you're less likely to draw into more mines than anything else. We'll find out whether or not that works out well for him or not soon enough. Suddenly, just 3 mana available to Fabrizio Campanino as he plays another Ancient Stirrings, looking to reassemble his 3-part combo of Urza's Mine, Urza's Tower, and Urza's Power Plant, and does find another one.
Rob.
It's the only way it's going to happen. You can see the reaction from Arno there. I think that he did make the right decision. It was just unfortunate how things played out for him there. And immediately back up to 7 mana off 3 lands. Casts and uses Relic of Progenitus. Does not want to see that Fulminating Mage get returned with a Kologun's Command or anything of that stripe. Also, would not mind an extra card in hand.
It gets in for 5 now. Arnaud is at 12 with Dark Confident. Luckily, Arnaud flips another land, just as last turn. But there's still the Thragtusk, which he needs to kill twice. And every big Planeswalker from Fabrizio will spell trouble for Arnaud.
Now this is the point where he really needs to kind of generate a little bit of card advantage while dealing with what's got going on. So if he could get, say, Bloodbraid Elf into a removal spell, that would be a fantastic position for him to be in, just to try and claw something back here in this game, which at the moment it seems to be very much coming up Campanino. Thoughtseize is a swing and a miss. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for Arno here. The fact that he's missed does mean that there's no gas in Fabrizio Campanino's hand right now, but all that discard can do nothing about the top card of the Italian's deck.
Yeah, and Fabrizio is holding Sanctum of Ugin, so 1 Planeswalker means actually 2 Planeswalkers the next turn. So as far as it's only lands, this is probably the worst land Fabrizio could be holding. I think we're going to see a Bloodbraid Elf, and Arnaud really hoping to hit once again another Fulminator Mage. That could actually seal the deal, make sure that Tron is gone again. Inquisition of Kozilek, of course, one of the worst hits right there. I think he cannot even attack. I mean, he cannot take 5 damage once again. Yeah, I think I like attacking with Dark Confident and blocking the Thragtusk with the Bloodbraid Elf.
Rough old spot with Fabrizio Campanino's life total still at 21 even after that attack.
Expedition map, let's see if Fabrizio has the Singleton Horizon Canopy in his deck. He's going to attack with the Thragtusk, generated 3/3.
The 3/3 beast still plenty big enough to tussle with Dark Confidant. Might as well play that Sanctum of Ugin and indeed Expedition map. All right, what's getting flipped off Dark Confidant this time? It's another land. So Arnaud Jokum has been relatively fortunate with his Dark Confidant flips these last few turns. His life total not descending quite as quickly as it might otherwise, but 21 damage is a big ask for him before the Tron deck finds anything scary.
So even something like Walking Ballista would be very problematic now. There's still the Ancient Stirrings, another Track Tusk would spell trouble.
I mean, essentially anything that's not a land is a pretty great draw for Fabrizio Campanino here.
Yeah, Sylvan Scrine's not the best draw either. I wonder, guessing since he doesn't sacrifice the expedition map, I'm guessing he doesn't play the Singleton Horizon Canopy, because he would have certainly searched for. Uh-oh, that's a lot of mana. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a 5/5 Walking Ballista.
And
Sanctum of Ugin. At least there's a Thoughtseize. But the Walking Ballista is a problem. It can kill both the Dark Confidant and the Liliana.
yes, I mean, otherwise Liliana would have just been able to force the discard of this Wormcoil Engine regardless.
Yeah, at least Arnaud is still holding 8 Thoughtseize. But he will go down to 7. With 3 pings from Walking Ballista, that's only 4.
I mean, Walking Ballista can get pumped up and attack and potentially get even more damage through, depending on how low Arnaud chooses to tap down here on his turn, depending on what he's drawn.
So he needs both a removal spell and a discard spell. Liliana is the removal spell he needs.
Well, Liliana is exactly what he has.
I'm guessing Fabrizio is going to kill Liliana and shoot Arnaud for 2. Arnaud down to 7. Down to 5 with the Thoughtseize. Gets rid of the Wormcoil Engine. And now we're back at saying go. I don't think he can afford to play the Dark Confidant. Oh, look at that. What a draw from Fabrizio.
Ugin was just waiting. He was just waiting for this moment.
Yeah.
Came along, did not even need to worry about dealing with permanents on the board, simply ticks up to a full 9 loyalty. Even if Arnaud Jokum had enough mana to be able to activate both those Raging Ravines, the big Spirit Dragon would be safe, at least for now. As things stand, Arnaud Jokum on 1 life, facing down Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Problem town, population Arnaud.
Yeah. Maelstrom Pulse. Bloodbraid Elf doesn't do it. I think it's down to Maelstrom Pulse.
And he draws that card very slowly indeed. Desperately needs for it to be something great. It is not. All that he has is a handshake and commiserations alongside his teammates, who are going to have to find ways of getting things going here. Now we get a chance to jump across to Matteo More once again against Damien Biot. And this seems hauntingly familiar. 3 life for Damien. Matteo More still on a full 20. Admittedly, this time there are a few more permanents on the battlefield than simply lands, which is where we joined it last time round. But Matteo More, again, not too much additional work to achieve here in order to close out this game.
PNLR, sacrifice the Topter, put your opponent at 1, or do you keep around the Topter? Damien Biot has 1 card in hand. The Topter is lethal next turn because you can pump it twice. I think I like keeping the Topter around to present lethal next turn. With only 1 card in hand, the Search for Ascanta is not going to flip. Yeah, I like the go here. Putting your opponent at 1 is not even that big of a deal. Lightning Strike deals 3. Oh wow, there's also Daredevil. Is this a scoop?
It looks
I
like
think the Badiali actually won.
Here's what's happening. Yeah, the other 2 matches were completed, so Damien didn't even need to figure out if there's a way that he could stay alive. We do have the team of More, Campanino and Badiali victorious in that our Time Warp match here from MTG Red Zone. We are getting perilously close, Moraine, to the point where it is the full-on cut where players are either going to make it into this Final Four or simply lose out and have to watch from the bleachers for the final rounds of our feature matches. We do hope that you get a chance to hang around and watch those matches. We'll be back with more Magic soon enough, but first, these messages.